Hello, Africa. Welcome to the Africa Desk Live with your host, Semantics King Jr.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening to everyone watching right now, whether you are in Ouagadougou or Malabo, Port Louis or Berlin, in Kigali or Miami, Lusaka or London, Kingston or Juba, Algiers or Nairobi, where we're going to be focusing today, or anywhere else on this planet, where an African heart is beating. Welcome to the Africa Desk Live. This platform, this space was built for you, not for governments, not for donors, not for foreign interest, but you, the African citizen, the African professional, the African student, the African mother and father, the African dreamer who loves this continent, even when this continent breaks your heart. This is episode 2 of 54 Conversations, our legacy, our year-long act of one African country every Saturday until we have all 54 countries on this desk. But before we begin, a quick note for you. As of today, the show runs 4 hours. So the first hour is going to be focusing on the country conversation. And today it's Kenya. The second hour, beginning at 11 o'clock, is beginning at 11 is going to be an opening standard conversation on the work of the African diaspora itself, including the organizations, the nonprofits, and the people in this country or in the diaspora doing community development on their own. Tonight, though, we will focus on the second hour, which will bring us close to home, keeping our young people in the Twin Cities out of the criminal justice system. More on that when we get to that. But if you are a community organization, you are running, whether it's nonprofit, for profit, and you're running it in the United States, in Canada, in Europe, anywhere around the world you are doing this, please get in touch with us so that you can be on the show. The second hour rather of the show every day beginning today is going to be exclusively for community development, the things that the community is doing that is impacting Africans both here, abroad, as well as on the continent of Africa. And so talking about Kenya, but before we do with Kenya, we'll go and do the things we usually do. We started doing last week, which is called Happening Across Africa this week. So let's start with that. One event happening in Africa that has already happened, I think it was yesterday, is the World Health Organization has raised the alert in DR Congo from high to very high as it relates to Ebola. So according to the BBC and the World Health Organization, the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo has now been escalated from being high to very high risk. The Bundibugyo strain has reached 750 suspected cases and 177 suspected deaths, with no approved vaccine or treatment currently available. Uganda has suspended all passenger travel with the DRC for 4 weeks. And Oxford University researchers say a vaccine candidate could enter trials within months. Event number 2, U.S. sanctions Tanzania police chief over torture allegations. The Associated Press reports that the Washington has sanctioned senior Tanzanian police official Faustine Jackson Makwele and barred him from entering the United States. U.S. officials tied the move to allegations that Kenyan activist Boniface Mwangi and Ugandan activist Agatha Atugaire were detained, tortured, and sexually assaulted in Tanzania custody. A government-appointed commission later found 518 people were killed during post-election unrest under President Samir Suluhu Hassan. Event number 3, where the focus is today on our show, Kenya transport strike call off after Ruto cuts diesel price. The Reuters news agency reports that the Kenyan public transport operators have called off a planned second wave of strikes after President William Ruto announced another reduction in diesel prices. The earlier strike over rising fuel costs brought Nairobi to a standstill and turned deadly. 4 people killed and roughly 30 injured in clashes with police. A pocketbook revolt briefly diffused, but the cost of living pressure across East Africa is far from over. The fourth event, ICC opens landmark Libya war crimes hearing. According to the Human Rights Watch and the International Criminal Court, judges in The Hague held a 3-day confirmation of charges hearing against Libyan national Khalid Mohammed Ali El Hishra. He is the first person to face justice before the ICC over atrocities in Libya since the UN Security Council referred the situation to the court in 2011. It's a long-awaited accountability moment for victims of post-uprising violence. And finally, Sierra Leone accepts first U.S. deportation flight. The AllAfrica.com reports that a chartered U.S. flight carrying 9 West African migrants landed near Freetown this week, making Sierra Leone the latest African nation to accept deportees under President Trump's immigration crackdown. The group included citizens from Ghana, from Guinea, Nigeria, and Senegal. And Foreign Minister Timothy Musa Kaba confirmed Sierra Leone has agreed to accept up to 300 people a year. The Democratic Republic of Congo, Ghana, and South Sudan have already received similar transfers. And now back to our show. Just flipping through my scripts here. So, okay, I think we've already been through this here. So, the first hour today, the stop is in Kenya. 2 years on from the Gen Z-led finance bill protests of 2024, the country is somewhere new. Not where the protesters wanted, not where the government promised, and not where the international press tends to leave it. We are going to sit right now with that gap, honestly. To guide us through it, our featured guest needs no introduction to this town. He has been living in this town and doing a really great job. I will give him the introduction one way or the other. He was born and raised in Kenya's coastal city of Mombasa. Tom Gita is the founder, editor-in-chief, and publisher of Michelle, which has been reporting on the news and culture of African immigrants in the United States since 1995. He holds a BA in business from Metropolitan State University and a public leadership credential from Harvard Kennedy School of Government. He was the original host of Talking Drum, the signature current affairs show on the African Broadcasting Network, a program that aired nationwide in the United States via the Dish Network satellite service. On that show, he interviewed Nobel laureates, including 2004 Nobel Peace Prize winner, Professor Wangari Maathai, the first woman from Africa to win the Peace Prize, and African heads of state. He has served on and chaired numerous boards, including Global Minnesota among them, and was the first board president of Books for Africa, the largest ship of donated school textbooks to the continent of Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say welcome to the show, Mr. Tom Gita.
Thank you for having me, Semantics.
Good
Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
So to begin, you have watched Kenya across 3 constitutional moments, multiple election circles, and now the Gen Z-led realignment. Take us inside this current political moment from where you sit. What is actually changing in Kenya right now? And what is the international press still getting wrong about Kenya?
Yeah, actually, I think there's a lot of things going on in Kenya, multiple things at the same time, to be honest. The Gen Z protests, we are calling that the third liberation of Kenya. So liberation, the first liberation was, when Kenya got independence. That was the first liberation from the colonialists. The second liberation is when the reintroduction of multi-party democracy in the late 90s, when multi-party democracy came back to Kenya. And then we did away with one-party rule, so that was the second liberation. That's also when we got rid of long-term president Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, who had been in power for a record 24 years, the longest serving Kenyan president.
Wow.
24 years, man. Some of us, some people call it the lost decades. Those were the 2 decades of lost development. So that was the second liberation. Now, the third liberation is what we're actually working on. That's basically what the Gen Zs were trying to do. Is basically the third liberation of the country. Okay. And as you've stated earlier, is the protests were all about cost of living, or what we call the finance bill of 2024, is what was the spark that brought about that Gen Z protests that were quite deadly. Actually, more on record, they said there were 60 people died, but many people think there was more than that. Those are the ones that could be accounted for. There are some that could be missing, and nobody has come forward to say, hey, my so and so is missing, because they don't want to bring attention to themselves. Okay, so that was I don't want to say defeated, but it went out quietly, not quietly, but the government was able to put it down because of close collaboration with the late Kenyan great Raila Odinga. They were able to kind of quiet things down, but it's not really, I don't think it's done per se. There's still a lot of underlying political tension that is you can sense. I mean, I was there in January, just 5 months ago. You can sense the government is very unpopular. The government of President Ruto is very, very unpopular. And there is a lot of realignment going on. There is thinking that the Gen Z will play a big role in next year's election, because President Ruto is up for re-election next year. So he's trying to co-opt the popular party. The largest party in Kenya is called ODM, Orange Democratic Movement. That's the party that was founded and led by the late Raila Odinga. That most of your listeners, viewers might be familiar with. So the president has been trying to co-opt that party to kind of see if he can ride on that party to claim next year that, hey, I have support of the largest party in the country, so re-election is inevitable, whether it's whether it's done correctly or not, we don't know. But
is it possible for him to ride on that party and still win?
Well, actually, what has ended up happening is that the party has split into two now. Okay, so there is the party that is more powered by the grassroots. The Secretary General of the party is called Edwin Sifuna, and Edwin Sifuna was, of course, a protege of the late Raila Odinga. So he's kind of leading one one part of the one half of the party, and the old guards that are cooperating with the government of President Ruto are on the other side. But you can tell with the way the grassroots has really rallied behind the Secretary General. You can tell it's not going to be possible. So I think President Ruto probably will have to find another plan B on how now he's going to do his re-election. But the one thing we know for sure is the government is very, very unpopular. I think it's very, very unpopular, and lately, as you know, Lars, lately it has been about the fuel prices. You probably have been seeing on the in the news, because they say I read, I think the people are saying the fuel prices have gone up almost 45-50% in some cases. Right. So it's a crazy time, and that's on top of a very high cost of living. because even though 2024 Gen Z was quieted down, it did not do away with the high cost of living. Okay. That finance bill was withdrawn, yes, but
we'll talk about that finance bill coming up quickly. But who do you think who do Kenyans believe would make a better alternative to President Ruto if he doesn't win the re-election?
So that's kind of what is being discussed in the political sphere currently. Okay, because there are a few contenders, and the question, the desire of the masses, the general population of masses, the regular person, is that there'll be one single candidate to face. If the opposition can unite, and then they face Ruto. Okay, so that's kind of what is being discussed now with the powers that be, within the opposition, because I believe we have about three, what you might say, three viable candidates, not including the Secretary General I just told you about, Edwin Sifuna, because the momentum right now, even though he's not a declared presidential candidate, the momentum is with him for sure. Okay, the momentum is with him. If you look him up, that's kind of where the momentum is. But we know for a fact that what needs to happen is that you cannot have 4 or 5 candidates trying to bring down Ruto, because that would be a perfect that would be a perfect way for him to justify any rigging schemes, for example. Any election rigging schemes, that it's actually easier for him to rig when there is, this multiple kind of candidates, because he can say, oh, they just split the vote, and I was able to get the simple majority I needed, for example, So so the jury is still out on who is the who people think is there, but currently the momentum is with this young man I told you, Edwin Sifuna, who is being equated to the Obama of the
of
Obama
Kenya,
of the moment, or the Mamdani of the moment, for example. That kind of vibe. It's that kind of vibe.
So I'm going to play a video for you, and I'm going to ask you questions that follow next. And again, to the audience, this is not we don't own copyright to this. It's from Al Jazeera, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the media, what they're getting right or wrong, and then see how the Kenyans here in Minnesota or abroad view this. So let's see here. Yes, share here.
Kenya in general is a country in economic distress. The prices of almost everything has gone up, but what has not been going up is the wages that people are taking home. They do not trust their politicians from previous experiences. What they find is that politicians would say something in public when they are under pressure, but when reality comes, they do the opposite. Kenyans are not against paying taxes, but they don't see what their taxes is doing for them.
Rule of law and the integrity of its constitutional institutions. President William Ruto doesn't have a choice between good and bad options. He only has bad options at the table. For instance, the Kenya's debt to GDP ratio is almost 70%. There is no room for him to maneuver with the debtors, and whichever way he goes, he is bound to not succeed in this.
Yeah, it's tough to watch.
So that, yeah, it is very, very hard to watch. As I was playing that, I was thinking about you, and I was thinking about the Kenyan here. We'll talk more about the international press here in a minute. But when that finance bill protest happened and it broke out in Kenya, like you mentioned, a lot of people died. What did you see in real time from Minneapolis as a Kenyan citizen living in the United States, and how did the Kenyan diaspora here respond to that particular event?
No, I mean the diaspora actually for most of the diaspora is usually on the opposite. If you think of opposition to government in Kenya, the biggest critics will actually be the diaspora folks, which is us. Okay, so we most of the diaspora was already on board with with the Gen Z as they were doing the protests. Lots of people are praying for them for sure. Because it was quite risky. You could tell. Just looking at the images that were coming across. That this is a deadly situation. But in general terms, most of the diaspora that I know was very supportive of what the Gen Z were up in arms against. Okay, because you have to realize that a lot of the issues that the Gen Z were complaining about, unemployment, high prices for things, we bear them directly over here because a lot of people have to send money to sustain people back in Kenya. So we have a lot of unemployed relatives back there that are young. So maybe you had sent money, for example, for your younger brother to go to university in Kenya. They finish, then there is no job. So those are the ones you are seeing. So a lot of folks here can actually relate. We were feeling it in real time. Okay, because normally when you finance your college education for your younger sibling back there or a relative, the expectation and hope is that, hey, once they are done, they'll get into the job market, get a job or do something, economically, and then they'll be off your back, of relying on you, so they can rely on themselves. But that never happens. So when all that was happening, most of us could relate because we are the ones who have to send this money for this youth to sustain themselves, or whether if they have started a small business, you kind of have to try and sustain them, help them to get it going, so a lot of these things we already can relate. The diaspora already is usually what's the word I'm looking for, is usually already doing a lot of economic activities back there,
Right.
where there is they are building something, they're sending money for some projects that they're doing. So all these taxes that were being imposed they do affect us directly, because when you send there, there's all tax for this, there's tax for this, and then now they also have been, one of the things they've been trying to propose is see how they can even tax some of the money that we send over there, that lands in people's bank accounts. So we felt it directly. There's no question. Yeah.
In terms of the great reporting there from Al Jazeera there, what do you think the international media has gotten right or is getting right, and what is it that is not right? Because the reporter there was talking about how the citizens don't even trust their own politicians. They don't trust the leaders. Not that they don't want to pay taxes; they want to, but
Yeah.
I mean, the leadership in Kenya, those parliamentary members, they make some of the highest salaries in the world. I mean, what is it that the media is getting right in Kenya, and what is it that is getting wrong?
No, actually, I think the media, to be quite honest, I've been one of the biggest critics of the international media, the BBC, and so forth. But to be honest, I think lately, I'll say like in the last 10 years, 5 to 10 years, I'll say, I think they have been doing a fantastic job, to be honest. And one thing that I think has helped them is they have stopped doing what I used to call what's that term we used to have? You know how they come in, they fly in, do their reporting, and then they take off. There's a term we used to have for it. It escapes me right now. But lately, what the people like Al Jazeera have been doing, or BBC, and even CNN, they actually have the local guys, local Kenyans, other Africans as the reporters, okay, that are kind of stationed there because they used to station, for example, they'll station their bureau chiefs. For example, there'll be like a CNN guy from here is stationed in Kenya somewhere to report on East Africa or all of Africa. But now, for example, with CNN, you see they normally have like Larry Madowo, who is a very respected, Kenyan journalist. And Al Jazeera does the same, I believe, and in even BBC. So I think that has been a big difference because these guys are quite attuned, to what is going on, and I think that's what you see. I report like the Al Jazeera one you just watch there. It's not made by somebody who just flew in today, and now they are reporting, and oh yeah, what's going on, this is what is going on, they're relying on somebody else to try and interpret for them. So I'm not as critical as I used to be before, because long time 15 years ago, I'll probably be saying something very, very different. But in reality, the other thing is, Kenya's had a very robust local media system space. But lately, a lot of them have been, undergoing some financial stress. So they have not, I think it has declined a little bit the way they report on things. The resources probably not there. So the international media coming in has actually been a boon, for the opposition, for example, even the Gen Z, for getting the message out. Okay, so because as you know, Nairobi already is kind of like the international media center anyway for the continent in a way,
Right.
outside of Johannesburg. So the media exposure and literacy is very high. It's there. You can't really say that there hasn't been good information coming out this time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about the awareness that the Kenyan in the diaspora got during that event in 2004. Now, the diaspora remittances to Kenya hit $4 billion in 2022, according to the World Bank, and more than half coming from North America.
Yeah,
maybe Canada, United States. What does that economic weight actually translate to politically in Kenya?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of discussion going on. I'll say in the last 3, 4, 5 years maybe, because right now most of the remittances that go into Kenya, a lot of it is for what we call it's not really for developmental projects per se. Okay, so it kind of just goes into day-to-day sustenance of I mean, not 100% of it, but most of it goes towards just the living expenses for people back over there. Okay, so so there's been talk lately that, hey, we need to find a way to see if these remittances can be used in for something more meaningful for the nation. But it has an impact in this way. The main impact is really, it's the largest foreign exchange earner for the country now, okay, surpassing tourism and even agriculture. because Kenya's economy for many, many years, what was been driving it was agriculture to earn foreign exchange and tourism. But now the remittances coming from outside have a very, very outsized role in the country's economy that cannot be ignored. Okay, even though it's going to, for people to consume for regular living expenses for the most part, if they were to stop coming for just 1 month, it would be catastrophic for the country.
Yeah. So, but does the diaspora have a voice in Kenyans' affairs other than just sending those remittances there? Is there a way that they can directly influence politics in Kenya, or its influence is overstated?
Yeah, we do. They do have actually the diaspora does have a significant influence on the politics, but I'll say it's more on the local level. Okay, not so much on the presidential level. So if you look at if you look what happens around, you see a lot of Kenyan politicians coming through from time to time. If you've been following, and sometimes we cover some of them on mshale.com. If you go there, you'll see just within the past year, there's been one of the presidential candidates has been here in Minnesota, for example. Okay, so it's because they know the diaspora plays two roles actually. The first role is, of course, the remittances they send, on a macro level. Okay. And then the second role they play is with the kind of influence they have with their local people back there. Okay. So, for example, you see, if, unlike somebody like me who's from a big city like Mombasa, probably I might not have that same influence. But say if somebody who comes from one of the villages in Kisii or something, for example, if he calls and tells all the villagers, hey, I believe so and so is who we should go with, a lot of them actually do that. Okay, so that's the influence they have. The voice of the diaspora is quite respected. So when they call and say, hey, this is what I believe is good for the country, that's probably what will end up carrying the day, especially outside of the big cities. And as you know, most of the people do not live in the big cities. The people out in the villages mostly. So a lot of the diaspora, for example, they are very active in many of these political campaigns that happen at the local level. Okay, they are known to sponsor. Sponsor is not the right one. To play quite a role, in raising funds, for example, for people who are running for parliament. Okay, because this presidential candidate that came to Minnesota, this I think it was last year. Yeah, it was last year sometime. It's about a year now.
Yeah.
One of the things, of course, was to rally support, obviously, for his candidacy. But the other thing is, is because he's asking people, hey, make sure when you call home, tell people I'm the one, for example,
to vote for.
Yeah. Okay. And then, of course, as we have a lot of professionals here, who earn very good money. So they were able to do a fundraiser for the guy. So he went back with some good change for the campaign, and if he continues with the campaign, he can come back again, and they can do the same thing again. So the diaspora plays a very, very important role in terms of just political education of the grassroots back in Kenya, fundraising for their favorite candidates. And even just general advice, on how to, because a lot of folks, as we are very familiar with certain ways on how campaigns should be run, depending on whatever experience you have over here. So that's kind of the influence that they bring to the political system back in Kenya.
Sounds good. So Michelle, your newspaper that you manage has tracked Kenyan and African immigrant life in the Twin Cities for 30 years, since 1995.
Yeah.
Across the act, the early dual citizenship organizing, the 2010 constitution, rather,
Mhm.
the election circles, and now the Gen Z's movement in Kenya.
Mhm.
How has the political engagement of Kenyans abroad
Mhm.
since then actually shifted?
Shifted. Actually, to be honest, it has not shifted a lot.
Mm,
You know why? Because since the 90s, the 90s, that's when multi-party democracy was coming to Kenya.
mhm,
There a lot of the people that were on the forefront were the diaspora guys. Okay, because you have to realize, some of the people that ended up doing a lot of that as what I call the second liberation
mhm,
of the country. A lot of them were exiled folks, so some of them used to be here in the States, for example, and then they go back. So we have always been more on the oppositional side of things, because yes, for example, when let's say even like the president that came after Moi.
mhm.
Okay, remember the man that led the country for 24 years, and then
Yeah.
a new president came in, and everybody was on board. So we were, we were happy, that happened, and people got on board in the diaspora and supported the new guy that had come in. But and it was a time of transformation for real. A lot of the accelerated economic development you see in Kenya currently is because of that president. We call him President Mwai Kibaki. So he was the
Mhm,
third president of the country. Okay, so a lot of things happened. But then also when it started going wrong, the diaspora was one of the people that started being his critics. Okay, because in fact, even his government when he came in actually there was a lot of diaspora folks actually, by the way, that formed part of that government. So people on board and they were happy. The second liberation of the country has happened. We have to support the new government. So people were on board. Okay, so things start happening. We can see things happening. Development is happening. There's political freedom is finally here. Things are happening now. This is when early 2000s, correct?
mhm, mhm.
So we go on. So Mwai Kibaki finishes his first term. Lo and behold, what does the guy do? He finishes the first term, but remember he came in with a lot of goodwill. Okay, because the second liberation of the country has happened, so we are supporting the new president. Everybody is happy, and development for real started happening. A lot of infrastructure, big infrastructure development started happening. In fact, a lot of the debt that we see now was partly to do with that huge infrastructure projects that that were initiated with good support. Most of us were on board with it, no problem. But what does the guy do? Finishes his first term. By this time, people are starting to get disillusioned with the guy.
Mhm,
Okay,
mhm.
so they are not they are not on board with him getting a second term. Okay,
Yeah. So
so
for a
so
young Kenyan sitting
Mhm,
in Mombasa or
mhm.
in different area of
Yeah,
Kenya,
yeah.
or for other Kenyans that are abroad here who are thinking about, say, development back in Kenya,
Mhm.
what can you tell a young Kenyan who is desirous, who is ambitious, who really wants a better life for himself and his family, sitting down in Kenya and just waiting for government? What kind of hope do you think they can have?
Well, right now, you see, we will have to go back to where the Gen Zs were, okay, and what they
Mm,
were pushing for.
mm,
Okay, they just wanted a better governance,
mm.
basically, because you see, this thing, without the right kind of governance, a lot of things just cannot happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Ruto administration, obviously, the criticism against it is that it's just bad governance that is doing currently.
Mm,
Because look here, one of the critiques that are directed at him, is people are struggling. high cost of living, and the guy just lives in opulence. Okay, you can't have these moments of, hey, let them eat cake, like how with the French Revolution, people are being told, hey, if there's no bread, why can't they eat cake? Type of situation. That's basically what this guy is doing. Okay, so jet setting, traveling abroad, flashy, and it just rubs people the wrong way.
Yeah.
And of course that's and that's part of governance. You have to bring people along. uh, when you're trying to introduce taxes, heavy taxing and whatever, people don't see where the taxes are going. Lots of corruption, these kinds of things just are bad. So that's why the Gen Z revolution was about good governance. So we have to get the governance piece correct before a lot of these things can, whatever the aspirations of the Gen Z are, can happen. Because a lot of this Gen Z, to be honest with you, they have embraced the digital revolution, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, they are into the digital. In Kenya, it's called the digital savannah. Digital, a lot of these guys, they do a lot of offshoring, they do a lot of freelancing, for example. Okay, they do job, they do what do you call it, some freelance work for people who are outside the country, for example. You can get somebody do some design work for you from here, and they're back in Nairobi or Mombasa or wherever. And basically what Ruto was trying to do was to tax some of this digital work that these guys do remotely, for example. They do some remote jobs for people that are overseas. And part of the finance bill, they were trying to see if they can tax these guys for these things that they do. Now, you have not provided employment for these people. Okay, they find a way to see if they can create employment for themselves. And here you come, it's a new industry. These people have started a new industry of digital nomad, digital work for people, remote work. Now here you are, you're saying you want to tax them. It's not even it's a new industry. So the problem with this government is that they do not they want to tax everything.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what
Yeah.
people up in arms up. They're up in arms up to now against that kind of thinking.
Last week on this show, we had a doctor of philosophy who is from Guinea. He mentioned that a few key things that have been prevalent across Africa. And we're
Yeah.
talking about African unity. We're talking about
Yeah.
how Africa can be. And he mentions corruption is
Yeah.
public enemy number one. He mentions war. He mentions all those things. And now you're talking about also corruption in Kenya. It's like it's a theme that is
It's everywhere.
permeating across.
Everywhere now.
How do we get rid of corruption in African countries, starting with Kenya?
Oh man, hey man, that's the most difficult question one can ask, to be honest with you. Okay, but here it is. This governance thing that we keep talking about. If you can get the right governance in place, the right people to come in, because actually, before I even say that,
How do you know the right people? How do you know they are the right people?
some of it has to be faith, man. Some of it has to be faith, because remember what I was trying to actually tell you, like with that president that came in after the second liberation. For all intents and purposes, he was the right guy. He was good. But what ended up happening after he finished his first term, towards the end of the tail end of his first term, he was becoming unpopular because of just regular governance issues. And it would have actually been okay if he had said, hey, you know what, it looks like I'm not going to win re-election, and he just goes. But what happened, that's when he rigged the election. And if you remember, we had what we call the clashes of 2007 2008 in Kenya, was that thousands of people were killed. Okay, but because he wanted to force himself on a second term, and people did not want that. So some of it is just faith. As human beings, we just have to see who presents themselves. They see, oh, this is a good person, and we the structure, because the in a place like Kenya, we actually do have the structures. To be honest, we have the structures in place to get the right person in. But the system, once somebody gets in there, there's just something that happens to them. We don't know what it is. We don't know what it is, because even Ruto, remember, when Ruto came, one of the problems people having with Ruto was promising people the sky, basically saying, hey, I'm the hustler. I am going to do this. Everybody will have this. Everybody will. Guess what? The guy comes in, and it's not even 2 years. That's when Gen Z happens, because people are like, oh my God, this was a wolf in sheep's clothing, basically. Okay. Yeah, but so we can't give up hope, because the thing is, you're dealing with human beings, and you present yourself, and we look at you, we see, hey, this seems, is the right person, but sometimes you can't control what happens when somebody gets in the system, because the system, for example, like in Kenya, the system is set up. It can actually take care of people like Ru. But the thing is, if somebody goes there and decides to misuse their power, when they go in and misuse their power, and they're trying to, get rid of checks and balances, for example, that are in place, like the way Ruto is trying to do, then that's when now you get things like the Gen Z protests, because the structures that have been put in place, suddenly somebody is undermining them that was supposed to be a custodian, because when the president is elected, we want him to be the custodian of the structures and systems that have been put in place. But when somebody goes in and they start messing it up, it's difficult, so the fight has to continue. You just can't give up. I think that's why I'm very proud of the Gen Z type folks. You have to keep, because democracy is not cheap, as they say. You have to keep pressing, you have to keep pushing. When you try one thing and it doesn't work, you try again. Democracy is very expensive and costly, and blood gets shed, for you to actually make it work.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. If you are just joining us, this is the Africa Desk Live. We are in conversation with veteran Kenyan journalist Taham Gita, who has been in Minnesota for quite a long time and helping the community with community news. If you have your questions, drop them in the chat for us. If you have any questions for Tom, we have we still have enough time here with Tom. So just so you know that. And going back to you, Tom, there is you have actually interviewed prominent individuals, and one person that I kept going through and looking through the records and news about was Wangari Maathai. I hope I'm saying that name right. And then and then a Kenyan head of state on Talking Drum. What has been lost since that interview you had? I know this is a long period of time, but when you take a look back, what has been lost since then? What has been gained in how Kenyan leadership talk to its diaspora today versus when you started doing this work?
Yeah, actually, a lot has changed. Actually, we have made a lot of forward steps. We've made some good progress, I will say. But even with progress, there are always challenges.
Yeah.
Okay. Even with progress, you'll always have challenges. The progress is this. I would say since that time when I interviewed Nobel laureate Wangari Maathai, the political space. Remember, Wangari Maathai, the reason she was awarded that Peace Prize, by the way, is because she was trying to make sure that the Greens, Nairobi is like a concrete jungle. If you've been to Nairobi, it's just, people want to just put skyscrapers and everything everywhere, buildings everywhere. And there was this community park that the then government of that first president I mentioned, Daniel Arap Moi, they were basically trying to grab a space of the very famous park in Kenya so they can put in an office tower. Okay. And you know, when Wangari Maathai was like, "Oh no, man, you're not going to do that." You know, that's kind of what put her in the spotlight. So that kind of activism that she did has actually progressed since then. Okay, this was what, early 2000s, right?
Yes.
It has actually progressed to a level, the consciousness of people that we want people, we want to fight for our rights. The public space has to be preserved. Whatever is for the public has to be preserved. So when you see things like the Gen Z protests, for example, those are actually developments from the fights of people like Wangari Maathai have been doing all these years. And that, which is why I was saying, you cannot give up, just because sometimes we put, we think, oh, so and so is the right person, we put them in, and then they go in and they mess it up, the way Ruto is doing, for example. So it is good. So we continue to build with each passing year. We build on whatever has happened, and then we hope, we pray and hope for a better tomorrow. So
Absolutely.
so and then also for the diaspora, the government consults with the diaspora nowadays, much better,
good.
much better than it used to before. Okay. There is a recognition that yes, diaspora is important, of course, because of the remittances, but then also, as since that 2010 constitution, the new constitution, is no longer really new. I mean, it's been 16 years now.
Right,
since that constitution came in, recognizing dual citizenship. So things have gotten, I would say things have gotten better. They consult with the diaspora widely. The one place that we are still fighting with as a diaspora with the system in Kenya is far as voting. Okay. So on paper, the diaspora is allowed to vote for the president.
In elections.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can vote just for the president, which is okay. But they have not made it easier for the diaspora to vote. Okay. So because like right now for Kenya, for Kenyans in the US, because that's where we are, if you're in the US, they say, oh, if you want to vote for president, you have to go to the embassy in Washington, D.C. And maybe, I think that's the only one. And then maybe they were going to see that, because that's what they did in the last presidential election. People had to travel to Washington, D.C. To vote there. I mean, who is going to go from Seattle,
to Washington, D.C.?
It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy.
What if you don't have the money to fly?
And you just said on your show here that how much remittances we sent to Kenya, half of it is from where? North America. Okay. Right. So you're telling me you can, all this money Ruto uses to fly all over the place, they don't have money because we have put a proposal to them and say, hey, we need to have a few regional centers for a place like the US. Okay. Because it's not that they do not have the money. If Parliament decides, we're going to budget for the money, it's there. Okay. It's there, and you'll find a lot of diaspora people. Actually, we can facilitate some of these things. Okay. So they need to make it easier for the diaspora, especially in a vast place like the US. Because somebody who is, for example, like in South Africa, because we have a large Kenyan population there too, it's easier for them. I mean, if they decide, we can go to Pretoria or Johannesburg to vote, it probably work fine. But when you start telling somebody, you need to go from North Dakota to DC, to DC, it's just crazy things. You're being very insensitive, and it's because you do not want people to vote. Yeah. Because even the few that voted in Washington, D.C. in 2022, of course, they voted overwhelmingly, for the Raila Odinga who passed on. So it's like if the president, if with the power that is seeking re-election, thinks they're going to get the votes, they will probably facilitate the Electoral Commission to come and vote. So that's the big fight we're still having with them. To see if they can maybe have like a center, like let's say in Minnesota or Chicago, for example, for people in the Midwest, Same thing for people, because for the US we have about 5 centers where Kenyans are. Because we have a large Kenyan population in the East Coast, the New York, New Jersey area, and Boston. Lots of Kenyans. Large population in Minnesota, as you know, where we are.
Yeah.
A large population in California, large population in Seattle, and a super large population in Atlanta and Texas. So if somebody is serious about the diaspora voting, they'll make sure that we have centers in these places for people to vote.
Well, we got 4 minutes to still be with you. I know you're a busy man, so we don't want to take much of your time. But before I can ask you this next question, I am going to I'm going to play something for you here to watch, and then I'll ask my question. Oh yes.
Yeah,
Great reporting there, by the way, with Tom and his team. And just before I ask my question to you, Tom, if you've never heard of Michelle newspaper and you're out there in Minnesota or around the world or anywhere, please visit the website. Tom is doing a great job in the community here, using his newspaper to serve as a voice for lots of the community, the African immigrants here. So please visit the site. If you are in the Twin Cities, you can, you pick them up for free, right, Tom? It's free,
that's
right?
correct.
Yeah,
That's correct.
it's
Yes.
free for. So go ahead, grab it. It's a lot of news, community news that is in the newspaper there. So as I watched that video, I was thinking this happened last fall. You reported on the Trump supporter there throwing copies of your newspaper into the dustbin at the Kenyan church in Brooklyn Center. That
Correct.
story stay with me, And what did that moment tell you, Tom, about where the Kenyan American community sits politically in the 2026 election that is coming up here? And how is U.S. politics reshaping diaspora politics?
No, well, that particular incident, that was a very annoying one for sure. I mean, one of the things I think as Black people, Kenyans, whatever, sometimes we just have to be careful who we let into our spaces. Okay. because this man, this is the premier Kenyan church in the Twin Cities here in Minnesota. Is one of the original churches that is still standing with a very large membership. Probably need a new building, to be honest, if you ask me, because it's overflowing. And then they have this single white man in there among the congregation. At first I thought maybe he's a deacon or something, but he was not. Because I've seen him there when I'm there once in a while, but I didn't think he had any role. And sure enough, the pastor did confirm to me that he does not have any role, but he has just imposed himself at this church, and in our usual welcoming manner, he has been welcomed, which is okay. But you should not. I don't think somebody should impose himself in such a way, to decide what is wrong and right. When I talked with the pastor, and they said there was no such policy, that we cannot put the newspapers in the cars. So what the guy was doing was wrong. There is no such policy. He should not have been doing it. But I did see some people, within the compound, as they saw it when I brought it to their attention, they were not happy as well. So that was a bit encouraging. There were a few handful of people that were agreeing with the man, but I was like, man, what's wrong with you?
But few Kenyan churchgoers were agreeing with the man.
Yeah, they were making excuses for the man, and I was like, oh, I'm not, don't give me that. But the vast majority were like, he had no place to be doing that.
Okay.
Yeah, and we still put the papers there. The pastor said, just do what you used to do before, and put them in the church lobby, and so we still do that.
Okay, we're gone 2 minutes over time here, and I know you are busy, man. So final question for you.
Yes.
Okay. The final question for you, as we close this hour on conversation about Kenya, and we're looking forward to every Saturday having it with different country. Now, the 2027 Kenyan election cycle is approaching. How are Kenyans in Minnesota and across the United States, how are they preparing for those the election that is coming up? And what should Nairobi be hearing from them? Not in slogan form, but in actually hearing from the people here on the ground.
So right now, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the issue is that people are still trying to determine who the opposition flag bearer should be. Okay, because the desire for most people is that the opposition unite and present one candidate, which makes it harder for Ruto to rig if he's planning to do some rigging. Okay, election rigging. That's a reality in Kenya. Kenya's presidential elections, they are always rigged, with the exception of the election that happened in 2002 that brought in that President Mwai Kibaki the first term. Okay, that's usually my thinking, that's the only presidential election in Kenya that was not tampered with.
Wow.
That's usually my. But then even him, after
every other election has been rigged.
That's usually my take. And then because the first Mwai Kibaki administration, that one was a legitimate one, and everybody agrees that. But then even him, he tried to rig himself in for the second term. Okay, so right now the Kenyans in the diaspora are pretty much just like the other Kenyans back in Kenya. We're trying to see who is the right candidate to face Ruto. So that is still, the jury is still out on that one. But as I told you, that Edwin Sifuna guy is really winning people's hearts at the moment, even though he's not a declared opposition. Now, one quick clarification: even though most of the presidential elections get rigged, the consensus is that local races, parliament, and those kinds of races at the local level, usually pretty clean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's usually my thinking.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and the thing we want the message that needs to go to the Kenyan elite is specifically the Elections Commission. see how they can make it easier for the
people to
diaspora,
vote.
especially the US diaspora here, to vote in a way that is convenient to them. Yeah.
Well, Tom, thank you so much. That was a powerful hour with you. Thank you. That
Thank
I
you so
learned
much.
so many things from you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the 30 years of Michelle that you've been publishing, and thank you for the work that is still ahead of you, Michelle. Newspaper is at michelle.com. If you've never seen this paper, if you've never read it, just visit www.mshale.com, and
Right,
then
thank
you
you.
will see this newspaper. If you do not already, find it and subscribe to it, support it. Tom, thank you so much, man. I appreciate
Thank you,
having you.
Semantics, for having me. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Okay. Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So,
It's a morning.
we just had yes. Welcome to the Africa Talk, Africa Desk Live, rather. If you're just joining us, you are with the second hour. The first hour was with Kenya. We're discussing Kenya. This is the second hour. And as I said at the top of the show, this hour belongs to the question that this program is going live with from now going forward, what the African community is doing, what the African diaspora is doing here in the United States or even in Canada or in anywhere in the world that you have an organization that is doing a lot for immigrants, that is doing a lot for African immigrants, I must be very specific, or doing a lot of work back home in Africa as well. The organizations, the not-for-profit, the community development work, the people doing it by hand in small spaces, often without funding and sometimes without even recognition. Tonight, the focus is closer to home than the continent. It is right here in the Twin Cities. One of the heaviest concentration of African immigrant families anywhere in this country. We have Somalis here, we have Liberians, we have Kenyans, Ethiopians, Eritrean, Sudanese, Ghanaian, Nigerian, and many more. And the work is one of the hardest pieces of community work here. Keeping our young people out of the criminal justice system before the system gets hold of them. My next guest, as you already have seen here, has been doing exactly that on the ground for more than 8 years. Pastor Paul Zondo is the founder of the Youth Crime Reduction. He has a YouTube channel called Prison Guard Diary. He has reached hundreds of young people directly and many more through the screen. He brings a pastoral frame to a deeply secular fight. Schools, courts, police, families. Pastor Zondo, welcome to the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Before we move forward with Pastor Zondo, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back with you. Let's take that break, Pastor Zondo, and then we'll be back with the show. 1 minute here. Just take a short break, and then we'll be back.
Beauty, everything so exotic. You need to see my baby so exotic. Everything she do so interesting. I never can take my mind off her. Mama Africa, Mama Africa. Let me take you to Togo, Ghana, Ethiopia, Uganda, Nigeria. Oh Nigeria, oh Mama Africa. Yeah. The love and peace is so exotic. It's so exotic. Yeah. Let me take you to Africa, Mama. Mama Africa. Mama Africa. Mama Africa. Africa. Cause if not beauty, my baby gets her. Lando, they get her. The land is so green. The land is too green. You can feel the wind in your face. You see the birds in the sky. the waters in the valley. You can feel the perfect smile. You can see the crystals in the water. You can see the highest mountain. Reach out, you go feel 'em. If you reach out, you go touch 'em. Africa, yeah. The love and peace is so exotic. It's so exotic, yeah. Let me take you to Africa, mama. Mama Africa, Mama Africa.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah. I don't know what is going on here with my screen, but yeah. Okay. It's technology. We're going to deal with what we have here, but having you on the show, welcome to the show, Pastor Zondo. It's we had a beautiful hour here this morning. You have been doing this work for more than 8 years now, and your YouTube channel, Praising God Diary, carries a name that already tells a story before a viewer hits play. Tell us about this thing and take us back to the beginning. How did you come into this work, and what is the story behind that channel name?
Well, thanks so much, Mr. King. I'm glad to be on this very reputable platform with you, and your level of journalistic professionalism is above the average. I'm very glad to be on this platform. Praising God Diary, it's a documentation of my experiences while working in a prison for more than 8 years, working at different levels, federal, state, county, city, jails in combined. So that's that's how I got to the Praising God Diary, just to document my experiences so others can learn from it.
That's good. Hang on 1 minute here. I was just trying to type in your title there. So that's good. So when did this actually start? Exactly the year, and were there things you noticed that made you to want to do this thing you're doing?
So I actually got into prison, got into jail by coincidence. I've always been a pastor, always pastor churches, pastor a couple of churches here in the States, in Columbus, Ohio, and Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Was the bread and butter for what I did here. But then the church that I pastored in Brooklyn Park, there was so much stress at the time, so I resigned it. And when I resigned the church, I was pretty much without any kind of I was not doing anything. So in the pursuit of employment, my employment options were very limited, just so to speak, because I've always done ministries. And of course, ministries are not just hiring people like that. You always have to start your own church and then be the pastor of it. So a friend of mine told me about the prison. This was in Missouri. And then I applied and I got hired. I was very desperate at the time because I had no income. I just got married. My son was just born. So there's a lot of social, economic pressure on me, and so forth. So when I got into corrections jail, I got in with my full might, joy, energy, and so forth. What I noticed was the similarity between God's laws and man's laws. They were not too far apart. And then I said, wow, so this is very unique. Maybe God is getting me to see things in a different way here. So God has certain laws, and man has certain laws for society. It's not really too far apart. So that's how I got into prison. And when I started to see the similarity, I started to see it as a calling within a calling. I started to take it very serious, take notes, read policies and procedures, and so forth. So that's how I got into it. I got into it with the intent to get quick money and get out. That was the goal because, hey, you know what? I'm a pastor. I'm not supposed to be with criminals. I'm not supposed to be working this kind of dirty place. I just need some quick money. And before I knew it, I was just racking up from one prison to another prison, and I loved every minute of it.
Interesting. So and thank you for giving us the history behind it. This is really amazing, and thank you so much for that work you're doing. Walk us through what the youth crime reduction actually looks like on a typical week. How you reach out to who reaches out to you, how you reach out to people, how do they find you, what does helping a young person actually involve? And I mean, there's a lot involved here, but walk us through how this is on a day-to-day basis. What is it like?
So first of all, we have parents who reach out to us on behalf of their children, directly and indirectly, to resolve some concerns they have with their kids. Usually, youth crime reduction, we like to catch it from the home because we know 90% of the problem starts from the home. Either an absent father or an absent mother, or chaos at home. It always starts from home. Or the kid brings a behavior from the school that festers into the home, that blossom or grows to contaminate the other children. So often work with parents to address those issues. Some of the issues are like getting up late for school, talking back to your dad or talking back to your mom, refusal to take shower, refusal to come back home when you are supposed to come back home. These things may appear very mundane or maybe very unnecessary, may sound like nitpicking, but all of these things have the propensity or the potential to build a person, build behavior, and then maybe character. And then, of course, it's kind of hard to change. And certain behavior can put you at increased risks to be recruited for criminal activity or even to be a victim of crime because you associate with wrong people. So that's how we work with parents. Some of them follow our videos and some of them call us. We do some speaking at community churches, community mosques, one-on-one conversations. And so that's how we reach to parents. And we always try to look at what is at home. Oftentimes, that's where the problem starts.
Wow, that's interesting. Sorry, sorry, I don't. I needed to clear that. So thank you so much for letting us know that. How do you balance it then with the in-person work of these young people versus reaching them remotely? Do you always meet them in person? Do you meet them remotely? I mean, and how is that working? Because there might be some people there's some parents who have their young kids who might be very busy. They might not have the time to bring their kids to you, things like that. How do you do that? How do you handle that?
So we provide direct communications with parents to parents. And then where the parents and the family is far away, like New York, California, we provide remote mentoring and remote support so we can have that kid stabilized. So that's how we go about it. So sometimes we meet in person, and sometimes we provide services via phone, via instructions that are followed through by the dad or mom, and the kids are also asked to follow through, and they're just phenomenal.
Do you? So I'm curious. Yeah, I still want to know here. So, what do you teach them? What do you tell those kids whose parents call and say, my kids is involved in this, is doing this kind of things. I want to be able to avoid them getting into trouble. Do you have a curriculum to teach them? Do you have instructional manual? What do you tell them? What do you teach them?
So just from my experience working in jails and patting down, processing, locking up about more than thousands of young men when I work in prison, there are certain consistent patterns that are documented while working in prison. And based on, I have a degree in criminal justice as well, but based on those documented experiences working at about 6 different prisons and jails, we use that as a guide to help a kid who may be getting in trouble or is at risk of getting in trouble. So there is no fixed formula for everyone. Everyone has different, unique situation. So we like to tailor our services to the need of that particular kid. So let me give you an example. Sometimes a kid may be having a problem in school because they don't see their father to be present in their lives. Okay, that could be a behavior problem. That could be a behavior. So he feels like he's the man and he has to tell his mom what to do. Okay, that's an example of this. So we can address that. Sometimes it could be an active father and an active mother present in the home, and the kid feels entitled. Okay, so we can address that. So, and sometimes too, we can have an active mother and active father who are positive, but live in a bad neighborhood. Okay, live in a bad neighborhood where drugs is of concern. Okay, and gangs is of a concern, and we provide services to tailor to those needs and address those things. Sometimes it could be a very good kid who have bad parents. Okay, the kid wants to do well, but his father comes in drunk. His father has bad association, or the mom is a bad role model. It could be a girl. It could be a bad role model. Drugs, alcohol usage, and watching inappropriate things, and the kids get to see those things on their phone. That could destroy the future of a young kid. So this everything is so very, very varied. It's very fluid. So there is no specific um, formula that fits everyone. But those are just an example of some of the things that we address when it comes to behavior of kids. So you can be very wealthy and live in a very rich.
If you, sorry, I don't hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. I might have to go ahead. Say something, Pastor Sono. I'm
Yeah,
having difficulty hearing you.
I can hear you. I can
Yeah,
hear you loud and clear.
good, good. So, do you do this in collaboration with your church, or you do it outside of your church activities? Because you're a pastor, right? What's First of all, what's the name
Yeah.
of your church?
So currently, I'm not pastoring a specific church.
Okay.
Currently, I provide support to pre-existing churches. I
Okay.
provide support to pastors who are already pastoring churches and who may need support with Bible studies, praying together, encouraging them to take some time off to rest, take vacation, monitor their weight, monitor their blood pressure, monitor their cholesterol, monitor enjoying life. Because when I was pastoring, what I noticed is that you can be so burnt out as a pastor, be so carried away with the needs of the congregation that you forget about your physical self, and even worse, sometimes your spiritual self. So, what I have enjoyed doing now is to be able to be my brother's keeper. We have a program where in every day at 12 noon, we pray for pastors who are planting churches in countries that they were not born in. So that's what I do on the spiritual side. So I don't have a church to pastor per se. I go as a guest speaker on speaking on this subject or preaching a sermon. So we use community organizations to liaise and address these issues by coming in as speakers, by going to homes, by going to area churches and area mosques and spiritual centers and talk about these things. Because there are not many people you can find in the street and say, "Hey, I work at 6 different prisons and I want to talk to you about how to minimize your kids' chances of going to jail." You don't find those kind of people easily. So most people value our time and our experience in having that diary wherein you can give fresh hand experiences. People really value that. So that's how we liaise with community organizations, local nonprofits to, and sometimes government agencies to address issues. Because believe it or not, the government intention is to reduce crime. Everybody says
Right.
that, but
Right.
sometimes less is done. That less is done and more is said.
Hmm. Yeah, I know you. I know you. You talk a little bit about this on the onset of the show here. I think in the second or third question there, but I want you to go into more detail here. From where you sit right now in 2026, what is actually happening with youth and the criminal justice system here in the Twin Cities? You know, specifically within the African community. You know, what are the headlines getting right, and what are the headlines missing on the ground?
Mhm. So in the diaspora, it is very tough. The criminal justice system is a big system. I think former presidential candidate Bernie Sanders said it is a $80 billion industry, annual industry, in terms of the healthcare providers, the commissaries, the overtime, the food, and everything else. It is an $80 billion industry. Now, when you come to this country for the first time and bring your kids here, you are actually oblivious to the laws of the land. Okay, and that is very dangerous. What is even more dangerous is that they tell you you have the right to do this, the freedom to do this, freedom to do this. What they don't tell you is that the system will aggressively pursue you, even entrap you. Okay, you see, so that's the mindset. They will pursue you and even entrap you. And if you are from a person of color, okay, let's just hit the hammer, a person of color, poor economics or low economics, low education, foreign born, it's not that they hate you, it's that you fall victim to a very sophisticated institution. And
How
it's not
so?
going to feel sorry for you. Okay, you want to what? Because when you get in trouble, you may not have the money to get a good
Mm,
lawyer.
mm,
Okay, you may be told, "Oh, sign this and sign that, and it'll just get off your record." No,
mm,
you see, and you will believe that because the person who's telling you may be telling you out of good faith. It could be a lawyer. You pay $15,000 to, and it's, oh yes, it's nothing. Just sign this. We know people who've gotten deported after the lawyer told them, "Sign this. It's going to be okay." You see,
mm,
so you have a very sophisticated system, very well funded, and you from overseas come here and you are told you have freedoms, you have rights, you have all this. But it didn't tell you that the system, when you get indicted or convicted, that record stays with you for the rest of your life. That's just an example of how sophisticated the system is. So
mm,
you from all nationalities who are diaspora youth should be aware and should be frequently informed about the dangers of playing with the criminal justice system. Okay,
mm,
so right now, what a kid needs to do is to stay away from anything that will get them in trouble. There is no joking
mm,
about it. Stay away from it. If it's an association, if it's location, stay away from it because the system is not designed for you.
mm. So, what are some of the activities? And again, I mean, probably will be pretty obvious, but someone with the experience of going to jail and then working with the young people, what are some of the things that can result into young kids, especially young kids of color, being involved with the criminal justice system and then eventually leading you to go to jail? What are some of those things that might be red flags, that might be bad, that you should avoid as a young person?
Um, the first thing you should avoid is you should learn to let things go.
Mm,
You should also learn to work on the sense of entitlement. That someone owe you something. So let's take, for instance, um, maybe you talk to a girl, and the girl refused to talk back to you, and you take that personal. You got humiliated. Maybe your friend talks to her, and she responds, and you got upset. You take that personal. That's an example. An example would be you feel like you're supposed to have some money in your account, and the only way to have money right now is to sell drugs, buy a gun, sell guns. So the sense of I need to have this now because I'm supposed to have it, that sense of entitlement can be a red flag for you to go to jail. All of those who are patted down in prisons when I worked there. I would say about 80% of them were there because of their reaction to something someone did to them. Almost everyone were there because of their reaction to what someone did to them. So if you learn as a man, and this is an art that every man needs to learn. It's not just diaspora youth. Every man needs to learn this because 95% of those in prison right now are men. People don't talk about that. Women don't go to jail that often. Even if they do wrong, they get a slap on the wrist. Everybody knows that because society doesn't see them to be evil, see them as caring and nurturing. So all men are at high risk because people perceive us to be strong and violent and so forth. So you have to learn to let things go as a man. And we have to train our boys to do that because if you don't have that mindset before someone really hurt you or took advantage of you, you might snap and then you regret later. So you have to learn. So that's one of the major things I see where young men struggle with, just to let things go. Because we're told in this society that we are supposed to have everything. We can get whatever we want. We can do whatever we want to do. But what you don't know is that you cannot, even if you are hurt. So that's one thing that I see will lead you into prison really quick. And another thing, being stubborn. If someone tells you, I don't like this, and you continue to do it because you can do it, because you're a bully, because you get joy from doing it, because you have money, because you have power, because you are a man, or because you are a woman, you see, those are things that will land you in jail really, really fast. Stubbornness. In our culture, we call it hard head. Being stubborn across the board. It goes back to behavior issues again. So this is why we catch behavior issues from home, because I can predict the kid that will end up in jail just by the kid's behavior at home. I can predict, I can even know people who've been in jail just by the way they walk in the streets, because I've lived around them for so long. There are certain things people do and say, and you can know that person will end up in jail. Now, when you say that around people, people get uncomfortable, and I'm not going to have friends if I say that. So I just know that. But just the way people talk, people walk, people behave, people treat other people, people mistreat people, you can know that this person is working hard for a jail cell. Behavior, attitude.
Yeah, very interesting conversation there, Pastor Zonu. Thank you so much. For those of you who are watching us online, and I think there is a lapse in between our system and the social media platform. The comments are not coming through the system. I'm seeing them online, but drop your comments in the chat section. And if you have any questions for Pastor Zondo, I'll raise those questions with him. But thank you so much, Pastor Zondo, for that. If you're just joining us, this is the second hour of the Africa Desk Live. The second hour is exclusively for community organizations, for nonprofit organizations, for people who are working towards making life better for African immigrants in the diaspora. And that is also a possibility of having an impact on the people who live on the continent of Africa. Because if you have your relatives in Africa and you have your family here as well, and anything that is impacting them here in a negative way has a potential to impact you back home in Africa as well. So this space is created for that purpose. If you have a nonprofit organization you're managing, if you have church programs, if you have associations that you're managing, you're leading, reach out to us. We can have you on the show and discuss the aims and objectives of your organization, how that is impacting the African community here, how also that might be impacting the people who live on the continent of Africa, whether you are from Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone, whichever country. And then back to the show. Pastor Zondo, this show goes out to a heavily African and diaspora audience. Like I mentioned, on the continent of Africa, we receive comments from people watching in Tanzania, in Zambia. And the Twin Cities is home to one of the largest African immigrant populations in this country. We have a lot of Somali immigrants here. We have a lot of Liberians, a lot of Kenyans. Our earlier guest on the show is from Kenya. We have Ethiopians, Eritreans, Sudanese, Ghanaians, Nigerians. The list is endless. The list is endless. What patterns do you see specifically in the African immigrant household when you, or maybe when the young person, starts heading in the wrong direction? What is the pattern that you see?
Very good question. I like that question. The pattern that I see before the kid starts to go the wrong path is dysfunction at home. Dysfunction at home. That's the number one thing that I notice consistent with kids that end up in the juvenile system.
So when you say dysfunction at home, can you elaborate more on what that means? What is the definition of that dysfunction at home? Yeah.
Okay, so in most immigrant homes, or in most African homes, in back home, the father goes to work, the mom stays home. They have aunties and uncles that are there, grandparents that are there to provide support, protect, and guide that young child. In America, the dad goes to work, he does 15 hours. The mom goes to work, she does 15 hours, and they both are gone. In the absence of the parents, okay, in the absence of the parents, the kids tend to be babysitted by tablets and phones and TV. And these are obviously not good means to train or to babysit a child. So in the absence of this, they have to watch rap music, drugs, guns, porn, and you name it. And they start to see reality differently. So that's where the problem starts. Even worse, they start to associate with bad people in the absence of their parents. So if someone who is into drugs come to the house to visit while the parents are out, they try too, So you find a 13-year-old kid doing drugs, not because his dad does drugs, but because his dad is absent so long that he has friends who do these drugs. So the dysfunction at home is the absence of the parents. Now, that's an example. Another example is wherein the father works, the mom is home in America, but the mom loves the children so much that whenever the father has a concern, she says, "Oh, not my boys, not my beautiful boys, not my beautiful girls. They can't be that way. No, they can't do something so bad. No, they just..." Then the kids start to see the father as the complainer in chief, someone who just creates problem, ignoring his signal for danger and red flags. So they gaslight him, make it worse, and then he shuts down. He gets quiet. So now the parents get a phone call by the police department and say, "Hey, your kid is here 2 a.m. He's hanging out, and we don't know why he's here for." Those are red flags. Those are the things you start seeing because one, the kid feels like, I don't have to listen to dad because dad is just making things up. Mom is cool with me, and I can do whatever I want to do with mom as long as mom is around because she's cool with me. And it could be a switch. It could be vice versa, wherein the dad thinks the mom is too hard, and the moms keep quiet until there's a problem. So it's oftentimes this structure at home when that structure either absence or over-loving mother or over-loving father that the parents are not on the same team to correct this child, invest in him, promote and reward positive behavior. That's where I see many immigrant parents, whether it's Somalians, I work with a lot of Somalians. They were some of my best friends, Somalians, whether the Ghanaians, the Nigerians, the Kenyans, the Liberian communities. That's just when there is a problem in the home. Another thing could be divorce. Divorce is very common in the West. And this also contributes to the kids getting out of control because now they're covering that structure. Mama and daddy's structure has been punctured. So mama is figuring out herself out, daddy is figuring out himself out, and the kids got to figure out things out for themselves. And by the time mama and daddy can figure out what's going on, the kids have gotten a couple of years on them. They learn some bad behavior. They are more rebellious. Okay.
Mm.
So those are the cracks that I see. And as a pastor, I can say the devil is responsible for that. The devil is breaking the family. But, if you're a Christian or not, just look carefully where those cracks that did not exist back home, where they exist here, and how the kids start to get into trouble. And when you get in trouble back home, it's always different from when you get in trouble here. I know people who maybe stole chicken when we were all, stole chicken when they were young. Nobody knows if they stole chicken. But here, if you slap someone here, 100 years from today, the records will be there that you slapped someone. That's just the big difference.
These are enormous social issues you just outlined there, and this is America, where every family's dynamics may be different. Some families, the husband and the wife work opposite shifts. It's a busy country. Everybody is fending for themselves and their families, and so they leave their kids home. So it's a really complex social problem. I'm sensing from you here, from the divorce issue to the parenting at home and the miscommunication here. That's the problem that can lead these kids to go into jail. What is the solution?
Simple. And this is going to shock you.
Mm.
If you have a kid, a boy who is between the age of 8 to 11, who is having some behavior issues, some attitude issues, he's talking back, he's being disrespectful to his mom or dad, causing problem in the school, I would tell you right now, today, start to look for a mentor, which is you can call someone like myself or anyone in your community. Um, we're not involved in this to bring the focus to ourselves, but you can talk to your church pastor, you can talk to your local imam, you can talk to anyone in your community who is other than your spouse to kind of set some guardrails, to kind of mentor, lead him. Because what we have noticed is that if a couple try to work with the son and he seems to be a little bit adamant to their advice and so forth, if you have an older, mature person in the picture, sometimes the kid tend to listen to that person more. Okay. So you get that person in as a mentor. They can go out for lunch. They can go out for what's it called, lunch, breakfast, and just kind of be there. So people tend to learn from people they kind of like admire, some people that don't have that toxicity with. Second thing I would advise is take the child to a place wherein the culture is different. Like I went to visit the Caribbean island of what was that? Barbados a couple of years ago. I travel a lot by the grace of God. I went to visit the island a couple of years ago. And all the kids were focused and prioritizing knowledge and learning. And they had this is a true example. They said they had a pilot program wherein the kids were given tablets and iPads to take home, and the kids love it. They love it, and they were doing so good on the tablet and iPad. But the grades started to plummet. The grades started to plummet. And the school district, I think Barbados or Trinidad and Tobago, one of them, they decided to withdraw the tablets and devices from the kids, and the grades started to go up. So you have to be aware and be looking what is working for you, your family, and your children. So if you have a kid who is having some issues, send them to a place wherein that issue will not be a problem. Tablet, phone, those are major distractions to learning and having bad behaviors today. Okay, so send them to a school system that doesn't have them. Even if you have to send the kids overseas. There was a young man that, just give an example, unrelated, but this young man, I met him in Barbados. He was from Canada. And the young man, and his mom and sister had taken him there because he just loved doing some things. And they took him there, and he was working on his medical program to be a doctor. Okay, to be a doctor in Barbados, left Canada, but it's just to show you how the dynamics of location can help to better a person. Maybe what he was doing in Canada was not a problem in Barbados, so he can do that same thing and still get a medical degree. When in Canada, he might be in jail. So just kind of be aware, see what you can tolerate. That kid can be somewhere with different location, different school district, different address, different association. There's a lot of things you can look at and play with and make that kid to be somebody better, or increase their chance of success and decrease their chances of going to jail. So those are just things that you look at. Yep.
Interesting. You talk about minimizing what you call negative youth police contact. Give us a concrete picture. What is it? What does it mean? What is the negative contact in your language, and what makes it negative?
Good. Most of the time when people see police, especially people of my pigmentation, see them in a negative way. They see police seen as bad, police are bad, and so forth. And it shouldn't be that way. Police are doing a great job protecting community, protecting society. The reason most people of my pigmentation have this negative view is because they have had multiple negative interaction with policing. So to reduce those negative interactions, you gotta follow the rules. Follow the rules. The rules like for driving without the influence. That's another big thing too. Driving without influence, driving while intoxicated, transporting drugs, taking guns from a buddy that he's not authorized to be having those guns, or you're not licensed to have those guns. Those things are just an example of negative interaction. And of course, loud music. I've heard people there was a deportation list I read a couple of years ago, and one of the reasons that person was deported was playing loud music. I mean, yeah, it's kind of strange, but it kind of builds up on multiple things. So just seeing the police as something that is good, seeing the police as you can also work for the police department too. Instead of you being arrested, you want to be the one doing the arresting, or maybe doing the opposite instead of having this negative interaction. So to reduce our negative interaction, we need to understand community policing. We need to listen to our parents. That's very, very good. Listen to your parents. Listen to elders, older brother, older sister who's doing right. Listen to them. And if you think like, you're not my dad, I can't do this, or I know better than you. Most kids nowadays think they know better than their dads. They know better than their dads. So that kind of attitude will increase the chances of negative interaction with policing. So let me say this before I conclude. So police does not fix the children. Jails does not fix people. Prison does not fix people. It's you. You have to decide to fix yourself wherever you think you're weak, wherever you think you are deficient. Not for the police officer, because he has kids and he's just doing a job, but for yourself. You see, when you look at it that way, that you just want to be a good person, you just want to be a good person, then you start to correct yourself for yourself. So that's the way to reduce negative interaction with police, holding yourself accountable.
Now, and it's good you brought that point out. You have experienced it, obviously. As a young person, you will make mistakes. You may have made one or two mistakes for which eventually things turn out to be differently for your experience, right? So young people will obviously make the mistakes and they learn from it. For others, they may not learn anything from it. My question here is, how do we actually help these young people? Your advice should go to the parents, to the communities, to the churches, even to the schools. And how do we help those young people, remain on the right path and avoid that negative police contact?
So what I did, which is very aggressive, but it's because of my experiences, take the kid to jail. Take the kid to jail. So if you have a kid who is having some issues, call the police department, call the county jail, make an appointment, and sign some documents, and let them tour the jail and tell them these are options, housing options if he refuses to follow positive directives from home. That is a magic. So the reason people sometimes go to jail, because we we glamorize jail. We glamorize jail. See, we glamorize being a thug. Want to be bang, 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 bang. Music and all this thug life, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we glamorize it. But when you take the child to jail and see those 300-pound door closed on them, see that they have to get their food in a little chokehold, see they have to wear different suit, see they have to ration toilet papers. It's a completely different word. And when you have a child to go and tour that place, that child will come back and you can ask, that's the housing options there for people who don't listen. It's kind of shocking, but for some kids to work, I took my son twice actually. We've toured two jails actually. And he was like, Daddy, this is kind of scary. I said, yes, it is scary. That's why I keep talking. That's why I will never stop talking, because some kids got here because they never saw what it looked like. But if you see what it looked like and they come here, then you really, really wanted to check it out, you see. So that's what we can do. So schedule with your local police department or county jails and take your kids for the fun of it. Just kind of tour there, visit. Usually the kid has to be 12 years, 13. Every county has different rules. That's one thing that I would suggest to parents, in addition to mentoring, counseling. Go there and carry donuts for the police department, carry donuts for the jailers, and just go and tour, go upstairs, go downstairs, see the little room, see the food they eat. On the outside, there is much freedom. We eat what we want to eat. We wear what we want to wear. We use the phone we want. When you go in there, there is so much restrictions. And even no matter how long I've been saying this, people are still signing up to go there. And I'm wondering, what are you thinking? It's not glamorous.
Yeah. Okay. You, Pastor Zono, you do this work as Pastor Zono. That's the person of faith. You are a person of faith, taking ministry into the deeper secular space. The police prisons, as you indicated, the courtrooms, the schools, the system itself. Now, how does your faith shape how you see these young people? That is a two-part question I'm having here for you. How do you see them based on your faith? And then two, specifically, what does the diaspora church in the Twin Cities owe these young people right now?
What does the diaspora change?
What does that's the second part of the question. The first part I want you to answer is, how does your faith shape how you see these young people?
Okay. And the second one?
The second one is what specifically does the diaspora church, meaning churches of immigrants? You have a lot of Liberian churches, a lot of Ghanaian churches, Nigerian churches, all these churches that are of immigrant origin. What do these churches owe the young people right now, especially young people who are born here onto African parents?
First, all of what I'm doing is influenced by my faith. Again, I am hardcore about my personal belief but that belief permeated into some of my my work with youth. So I believe that every human being is a project, is a work in progress. And I believe everyone is created in the image of God, and God wants the best of you. So the fact that God wants the best of you, and with my pastoral care background, so I see everyone a potential project that can be fixed and become better. Even myself, I see myself as a project in God's hand that can be better. So with that mindset, all of what I do is influenced by my beliefs that we all can do better, we all can be better. And the reason that maybe we don't do better is because we don't know better. We don't know better. And the Bible teaches about how can they hear without a preacher, and how will the preacher go if he's not sent. So I see myself as an evangelist, spreading this good news so that people can hear, so that they don't give an excuse. So speaking of what the diaspora role is in this development, this is where we struggle, because most diaspora churches are Pentecostal based, and Pentecostal often pray about everything. Everything is demon, and it's a demon, and it's a demon, it's a demon. And I disagree that everything is demon, So the diaspora church has really failed the young people. There is no programs for youth outreach or at-risk youth. I mean, we invest in $1 million buildings, which is good, but what percentage of that budget goes to preparing the youth for tomorrow? Let me just ask the question, when last a diaspora church took their time to take one donut to the county jail in their city? Zero. If you do that, I applaud you. But that's where the magic is. You see, when we start going to these places, these children that are locked up, and not just concluding that a demon took them there and took donuts to those county jails, appreciated the police officers for their work they do. Because the police officer didn't get your kid there, your kid actually got him there. Police officer can be you, can be me. And one of the things I want to say to before I is I encourage young men to join law enforcement. I really do encourage young men, whether you're a pastor, a spiritual leader, or whatever, I encourage you to join law enforcement because it's not for certain people, it's for everybody. So then you will see things a little different. But going back again, so when those diaspora churches start having a program to reach out to the jails, to the prison, to catch those problems before those people go to jail, to have a counseling, mentoring program for those kids, that's where the diaspora church needs to be. I was in Canada a couple of months ago, preaching at my dear friend's church there. And what I noticed was that when the sermon was ready to come, everybody got on their phone. Everybody was on their phone. I mean, like, so, and I noticed that people were so occupied with the phone. And then I took notes. And then when I went to preach at my friend's church in Brooklyn Park a couple months ago, I noticed that only the youth were not connected with the service. There was nothing there for them, and I started asking myself, how can we get the youth to be excited about faith again? How can we get the youth to be excited about faith again? Okay, so the point I'm making is that we need to find programs that make church relevant to the youth. If not, we'll lose the youth. And we don't have that yet. There is no plan for any diaspora church. We're just preaching, evangelizing, building mega buildings, and there is nothing for the youth, and our kids are going to jail. You'll be surprised how many pastors have children in jail. We don't talk about that, but that's a humiliation. That's painful, and it's something we don't like to talk about. And this is why I decided to say, you know what? I want to be able to help work with pastors so that they can rest. They can spend time sometimes with what truly matters, like taking vacation or just resting or managing your blood pressure, managing your health, your weight. Those things are things that are very, very passionate to me because I've been there before. The reason I resigned my church was because I was burned out. And I know what it means to be burned out. Burned out wherein you forget to even read your Bible, but yet you are supposed to preach on a Sunday morning. So the diaspora church has failed the youth. I'm sorry to say, the diaspora church has failed the youth. But it's not an end.
We have 1 minute to go, so I got to wrap this up. And finally, the final question, just to close the show, if you could put one ask on the table tonight to a parent who is watching or who will be watching later, for a young person listening to you, for a police officer, for a school administrator, for a community leader, or even for the church pastors who you think have failed the community, what is the single thing you most want them to do tomorrow morning? Not today, tomorrow morning.
For the pastors, for the diaspora churches, I'll say have a prison ministry. For the school teacher, before you make a judgment on the kid, check his home, check with his parents, see what he's dealing with at home. For the police officer, not all kids are bad. Just because they don't speak English, they don't understand the law, doesn't mean they were actually doing bad. For everybody else, pay attention to your kids. Follow them. It's not being intrusive, because when they go south, they do go south. And it's hard to fix it when they get in the system. It's just too late. It's just too hard. So just make sure that they don't get in the system. The system is complicated, it's big, it's expensive, and it's not for you and I.
Well, thank you so much, Pastor Zono, founder of the Youth Crime Reduction. The YouTube channel is Praising God there, spell out one word. Search it on YouTube. Share it with one person, with one young person, one parent, one pastor. You know, thank you, Pastor Zono, for the work you're doing. We appreciate it. Please have a great day. Next Saturday, just before we let you go, May 30th. Yes, thank you. It will be episode 3 of the conversation. We will go to Morocco. The same time, same place, 10 o'clock Central. You know, it's going to be 4 o'clock Casablanca time, I believe. Morocco sits in the category of one on the continent, never colonized in its form from, you know, compared to its neighbor, a monarchy that has outlasted a wave of revolutions on its east, a country whose young people led the Arab Spring with the February 20th movement in 2011 and have lived with the answer to that movement ever since. We are going to sit with that, with what 15 years of that experiment has actually produced. The press freedoms tested, the digital rights fight, the questions of Western Sahara, and what a Moroccan 25-year-old today actually wants from the state. That will be next Saturday at 10 a.m. In the second hour, we will be discussing diaspora engagement. If you have an organization, you have a nonprofit, you have whatever you are dealing right now, if you're leading your nonprofit, reach out to us. We will feature you just like we did with Pastor Zondo. You know, you tell the community what you're doing, how that is impacting the community, how even that might be impacting the continent of Africa. Until next time, man, thank you so much. This has been the Africa Desk Live. If you've never subscribed to this channel before, subscribe to the Africa Desk Live on YouTube, on Facebook, and on X. We are live every Saturday on those channels. Follow us, you know, share the show with people. This is your platform. This is your community. Again, we bring you here to talk about the things that are more important to you, that are more important to each and every one of us. Until then, see you next Saturday, Pastor Zondo, and see you next Saturday, the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ooh, Africa.
We choose the